Thanks so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Adam, for giving me the opportunity to talk on this platform. Yeah, Adam mentioned it. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Bruno Paquin, the CEO of AtomVie Global Radiopharma. Just a quick note, I'm a scientist by training. I have a PhD in biochemistry, but very early in my career, I shifted to business development, and here I am today, CEO of a wonderful company. We are about 120 employees, and we are busy because, as you will see, the field of radiopharmaceutical is booming as we speak. So today I'm going to introduce you to the company, what we do and where we're going, while talking about the benefits and challenges of radiopharmaceuticals. So this is what we do. We basically empower a new class of drugs that we call radiotherapeutics, and I hope that throughout the presentation you will understand what are radiotherapeutics. So in terms of our company, we are a global leading CDMO. We currently generate in the range of $25 million of revenues. We spun out from a center of excellence, which is a non-for-profit center of excellence that was created back in 2008 at McMaster University in Hamilton, in Ontario. The center was called the Center for Probe Development and Commercialization, and we really went above and beyond in manufacturing those drugs that I will be talking about today. But we came to a time where the space and the infrastructure at the university were very limiting for what we wanted to do. So we decided to spun out the contract manufacturing activities into a new for-profit companies. Now that's the AtomVie Global Radiopharma. And we have since raised $90 million in equity financing, and that money is being used for constructing a new facility, to which I will be making an introduction a bit later during the presentation. And basically, we are one of the very few companies around the world with the expertise that we have. Very few companies actually can do what we do. And this is something that we as Ontarian or even we as Canadian have to be proud of, because again, it was born out of a non-for-profit center of excellence. And here we are, a very large company servicing the patient community across the world. So during this presentation, I will be talking about some facts on cancer. I will introduce you to what are radiopharmaceuticals, talk about our company, obviously, and I will also talk about some safety considerations, because usually when we talk about radioactivity, because this is what those drugs are, people go bananas, and you will understand later why I'll say that. Going back to cancer, this is a very devastating disease. It's the leading cause of death in our country. About 20% of the population is expected to develop at some stage of their life cancer. And if I were to ask if any of you has had any close experience with somebody, a close acquaintance, whether a family member, yourself, a very close friend, it's over 80% of the population that have lived through that experience. So it is a very devastating and a very common disease at the same time. So this is where radiopharmaceuticals come into play. And what are they? They are basically regular pharmaceuticals that carry a radioactive payload. So this is the very, generic structure, if you will, of a radiopharmaceutical. You have the ligand. The ligand will be responsible to bring the radioisotope or the radioactive payload to the site of disease through a molecular recognition of receptor expressed at the surface of the cancer cell. And the radioisotope is basically linked to the ligand through a spacer or a linker. And what these types of molecules can do, they can be used for diagnosis. Basically, they can be used for diagnosing and staging cancer. They can also be used for treating cancer. And you can see that as targeted radiotherapy, which means we bring the radiotherapy within the body at the molecular level at the site of the disease. So I have a little diagram that shows how this works. So if you go for the diagnosis side of things, you have your cancer cell. That cancer cell express some specific receptor at their surface, and you have your drug that is injected in the patient, and then through a molecular recognition, the radioactivity is brought to the cancer cell or the tumor site, right? So what is radioactivity? It emits some radiation. That radiation is actually light, and if once it's in the body, if you go through a scanner or some type of camera, then you can get an image of the whole body. And obviously, you will see some organs linked to excretion, like the liver, the pancreas, the kidneys, and the bladder. But you will also see some tumor site. And in this case, there's one tumor site, and you see the little arrow pointing to it. But if you will also see if the cancer is metastatic, and if metastatic, to which extent and where in the body those tumor sites are located. Now, if you go to the treatment site, it starts the same way. You have to inject the drug into the patient, and you have your cancer cells with always the same receptor. However, in this case, upon recognition, because of the type of radiation that you will have in the therapeutic side of the molecule, then the radiation will kill the cancer cell. So in a nutshell, in order for a diagnostic agent to be proficient, you need a very low level of radiation, because the goal here is to see, not to treat. However, for the therapeutics molecule, you will have a higher level or higher energy type of radiation, since the goal is to kill the cancer cell. And the same molecule with a different isotope can be used for both diagnostics and therapeutics. So what kind of promise those type of treatment brings to the patient community? It's actually, some results are pretty astonishing. So I have an example here of a prostate cancer patient, and you can see pre-treatment, the PSA, which is the prostate-specific antigen, that's a circulating biomarker, is about 75 higher. The level of PSA is 75 higher than the normal level. And you can see the prostate cancer cell are an indication that is very well suited for this type of treatment or these type of drugs, because they do express at their surface a molecule that is specifically expressed in prostate cancer and are either not expressed or very minimally in healthy cells. And that receptor is called PSMA, for prostate-specific membrane antigen. And in the pre-treatment image, you can see that the PSMA targeting diagnostic agent. And you can see that the cancer is pretty much everywhere in the body. And for whatever reason, prostate cancer cells, when they are metastatic, they tend to accumulate in bones. And I've seen picture that looks like full X-ray. You see the full bone structure because of the metastatic prostate cancer cell. So after 3 treatments over 6 months of a PSMA targeting therapeutic agents, you can see at month 6, you see that patient is basically cancer-free. The PSA level is back to normal level, and it is astonishing results, as I mentioned. It is very exciting. The only problem with this is that a year or 2 later, in most cases, if not all, the cancer comes back. And one of the possible reasons for that is that the only patients that are currently admissible or eligible for this type of treatment are very, end of the line patients, the patients that basically that's their last chance, if you will, and it's 3rd or 4th line type of treatment. So as an industry, we're working at treating patients much earlier in their diagnosis of cancer. And although we have very, very limited data on this, it seems that the cure can be permanent if we are able to treat the patients earlier in their cancer rather than wait until they have exhausted all the other types of treatment currently available. And this is where AtomVie Global Radiopharma comes to play. We basically are a CDMO, a contract development manufacturing organization, who has developed a very strong expertise in the GMP manufacturing and global distribution of these drugs. So we can take whatever the sponsor has developed, scale it up, and make it safe and at a right scale for human injection. We can also help throughout the trial with some regulatory affairs for filing the various regulatory agencies. But really, the bulk of what we do, as I mentioned, is the GMP manufacturing and the global distribution of these drugs. We have a very strong quality and compliance, mindset and vision. We are very well recognized in the industry for that, and we're very good at scaling up process, whether it's going from animals to human or going from the various throughput that is required as the drug progresses through the various stage of clinical development. And we are also fit to make the commercial manufacturing or the manufacturing of marketed product, which usually require much higher throughput of manufacturing. So despite the promise and our own expertise, these drug does not come without challenge. First, being a radioactive drug, by definition, radioactivity decays over time, which means that the drugs that we manufacture have a very, very short shelf life. On average, they have 4 to 7 days shelf life. We have one drug that we managed to get to 15 days shelf life, but really the bulk of what we do is 4 to 7 days shelf life, which means that once we end the synthesis of the drugs, we have 4 to 7 days to ship it to the clinical site and for the patient to be injected. So here I'm putting in parallel what the patient has to go through in terms of getting the treatment, and in parallel what we need to do in order to get the drugs in time for the patient to be injected. So those type of drugs, they are not available in many, many different places. So mostly it's in the big cities. So imagine the patient lives in Sudbury, needs to go to Toronto to get the treatment. So the day before the treatment, travels to the hospital and then gets to the hospital in the morning. There are several pre-treatment that needs to be done. And then let's say in this case, it's lutetium dotatate. It's for neuroendocrine tumors. The drug gets injected at 10 a.m. in the morning. So in parallel to that, what do we do is that while the patient travels to the hospital, the isotope travels to our facility. And then during the night, we start the synthesis. Early morning, the synthesis ends. The drug is shipped under quarantine, if you will. And then at about the same time that the patient arrives at the clinic, the drugs arrive at the clinics as well, and the product is released pending positive quality control results. So we're basically working with what we call just-in-time manufacturing, which means that every time we do a batch, it's for a specific patient at a specific clinical site for injection at a specific time. And also you can imagine, that any glitch anywhere in the supply chain, whether it's for the delivery of the isotope, the manufacturing itself, the QC, the release, or the delivery of the drug, then the patients won't get its treatment. So it is very important for us to be what we call right the first time and get the drug in time. And this example is relatively simple because it's basically the example. We are based in Hamilton. We ship the drug to Toronto. It's 1 hour drive. So we have some leeways in terms of logistics. However, we do ship our drug everywhere in the world. We ship our drug as far as Australia, Asia, Europe, South Africa, South America, and obviously US and Canada. So you can imagine if you have a 5 days or even 4 days shelf life, you ship it to Australia, your margin for error is basically 0. And also, if we miss the delivery, that means the patient has to be rescheduled. And it's not just a question of being rescheduled 1 day or 2 days after, it's a week or 2 weeks after, because there's a whole lead time to get the isotope, manufacture the drug, and shipping it out. So it's a very demanding field, but at the same time, you saw the promise, and this is an expertise that we have developed at our company, and we are servicing basically the patient population throughout the world. So a bit of safety consideration. I did mention the short-lived products. So the half-life of the isotopes that we use to manufacture the drug are on average from 2 to 8 days, which means that you usually calculate about 12 half-lives, so 3 to 4 months. There's no more radioactivity, in the facility, or if there's a mess up at the clinical sites. It's a relatively short time to get rid of the activity. Remember that these are being injected in humans, so we're not talking about an atomic bomb here. The goal is to kill the cancer cells, not the patient. And whatever we do is highly regulated. We work under Health Canada, the FDA, or any other regulatory agencies from other jurisdictions. Health Canada would be more concerned about the pharmaceutical aspect of the drug and the safety of the drugs and the patient. But we also heavily regulated by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission because our drugs are radioactive products. And in this case, they would be mostly concerned about the radioactivity component of the drug. And then while Health Canada is working at ensuring the safety of the product, the CNSC and the patients, obviously the CNSC is working at ensuring the safety of our staff and the general population. And sometimes it comes into contradiction because the Health Canada will ask for certain measures that we cannot follow because we're working with radioactive products. So it's a bit of a dance between the two, but we managed to make both happy and to ship our drug throughout the world. The other thing is that we're working with very low throughput. I mean, the biggest batch that we do is basically less than a cup of a product, and our dose are more or less equivalent to a tablespoon. So it's very easy to contain, even if we mess up. It's very easy to contain. It doesn't flow into other portion of the environment. And even for the high throughput that we intend to do in the near future, it's going to be at the super maximum 4 liters per batch. Again, volume that are relatively easy to contain. So in terms of safety, it's very safe, despite the fact that we work with radioactivity. And I come back to my bananas. So before you go bananas, it's very telling, right? If you go at the top of the cartoon, you can see that if you live within 80 kilometers of a nuclear plant for a year, you get the same amount of radiation than eating a single banana. So it's just to show you, sometimes we hear, oh, nuclear plant, that's very dangerous. Basically, it's not, as long, obviously, as the nuclear plant is maintained properly. But the radiation that you will get nearby is basically nothing. And if you go take a flight from, New York to LA, Montreal to Vancouver, that's the equivalent of 400 bananas, which means in a single flight, you get 400 times the radiation of a year living within 80 kilometers of a nuclear plant. So I think I use this diagram just to put things into perspective. Even living one day on Earth in general, right? It's 100 times more than the so-called additional radiation you will get from within 80 kilometers of a nuclear plant. So just keep things into perspective. The other message I'd like to put out is that within Canada, we have a very strong ecosystem in this industry. It is a very niche and specialized industry, but Canada, for some reason, have a very good position. So it's up to us to keep that position. And whether you talk about the isotope, the production and the supply, the research and the clinical development, or the commercialization with biotech and companies such as AtomVie, who are there to help that commercialization by manufacturing, we're a very strong position across the world. And then if you are to look at the radiopharmaceutical pipeline, right? If you look at the approved product, there's 5 products currently approved on the market. It's a very small number of products. If you look at phase 3, so the phase 3 is the last phase into the clinical development. So these will be the products that are likely to be approved within the next year or so. Then it's a very small number. But if you look at the preclinical and the phase 1 product, there's tons of them. So it does speak about the infancy of this industry and the fact that these therapies are a new class of drugs. But it also does show all the opportunities that a company such as AtomVie has into benefiting from all the pipeline that they need in manufacturing and production that will come as these drugs progress through their clinical development. So a few words about our company. I did mention that we raised $90 million, and it's basically that money is for building a new facility. So I have the photo here, the shell or the building has been completed. So that photo is a real photo. It's not a rendition or anything. The facility is 70,000 square feet. It's about 5 times the space that we use currently out of McMaster University. We do expect, however, even it's at 5 times, it's at least 10 times the production capacity because one, the flows of production would be much more optimized. We're currently spread on campus on 4 different buildings and different floors of the same buildings. Like our inventory is 10-minute walk from our lab, so it's definitely not optimal. But with this facility, everything would be under a single roof. And it's also very scalable, which means that we will be able to work on the low throughput needs, like phase 1 product or product that are very early in their clinical development, up to very high throughput for a successful drug on the market. And again, we are really well positioned in terms of know-how, staff, and capacity to take advantage of the wave of product, or I should say the tsunami of product that are coming our way. So my last slide, just to mention, that's the management team at AtomVie Global Radiopharma. We have a wealth of experience, and this is the management teams. But I did mention we have 120 employees actually, and really without all the staff in there, we could not do what we're doing. So for me, from the production tech to the supervisors, to me, it's all the same. We all contribute to the success of the company. I would not be able to be where I am if I would not have the support of the team. And when I say the team, it's the whole company, all the teams, whether they are in production, QA, QC, regulatory. It's very, very important that we all work together. And I feel very, very supported by the team. So this wraps up my presentation. Happy to connect, right? You have the email in here. If you have any questions about this industry, please contact me or Gadir. Gadir is my head of BD at AtomVie. So if you have any questions on that, she will be very happy to take them on.